just complaining and negative. And then obviously we know what he does eventually, but what happened? What happened to Dane? Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. As you can tell from the title of this video, yes, I finally joined the rest of the bookish world, and I read Fourth Wing. It is a beautiful book. I don't even have that special edition with the sprayed edges, but even just like that, it is stunning. I've had this book ever since it first came out, which I think was in 2023, and I have not read it until literally the first week of January of 2025. This is my first book of the year. In this video, I'll talk about things that I loved, and I will also openly talk about things that I did not love as much. But I do want to say no hate to the author. If you're one of the people who gave this book 5 million stars on Goodreads, that's amazing, and I'm so happy for you. And anything that I say in this video does not invalidate how you feel. I was afraid to read this book because it was so incredibly hyped up on TikTok, on maybe not so much YouTube. I feel like YouTube was always pretty critical of this book. Not everyone, but at least the videos that I have seen. But generally the consensus was that this is the best new adult romantasy that's come out in years. All of this hype really scared me because I was looking for the book that would be kind of in the vein of like a Divergent or a Hunger Games, that would really just make me feel so attached to all of the characters. I have always loved Triss and Four from Divergent. As soon as the book came out, I read it, and that was my ship. I love those two together. When the movie came out, I was like, Theo James is a god. I just loved it. So I was kind of hoping that Fourth Wing would give me those same feels that I felt when I was reading the Triss and Four story in Divergent. But again, because of the hype, I was like, either it's gonna give me that, and this series is going to be my new absolute obsession, or I'm going to be very disappointed. I fell sort of in between. So I guess I should say that I gave this book 3 stars on Goodreads, which is not bad and not amazing. It was okay. I'm sorry for the change in lighting. I'm filming next to a window and the sun is just doing its thing. But let's get into the nitty-gritty, and let me first talk about the things that I genuinely, honestly enjoyed about Fourth Wing. So the premise, I think, is really cool. I mean, you've got War College, you've got dragons, you've got this girl who is definitely not in her element when she first begins the journey, and then over time she gets better and better. It's always so fun to see a character that is just thrown into a scenario that you would never expect them to be in, and then you get to follow that journey, which I feel like Fourth Wing definitely accomplishes. The title of the book is very clever because it not only references the 4 wings, but also it could be seen as a reference to the dragons themselves, since they also have wings. There is magic in this book, but I specifically loved the concept of the signet powers and that they are unique to each individual writer. I thought that that was such an interesting concept to explore. I liked the fact that there was some disability representation in the story. She mentions how she is very fragile, how her bones tend to break pretty easily, and how her joints tend to like pop out of place. So I thought it was great to have a main character deal with something like this, whether the I don't have any personal experience with this condition, but at least it's in the book in some shape or form. The book is pretty fast-paced, at least in, I want to say, the first 100 to 150 pages. So I honestly just kept flipping page to page, and I didn't feel bored. It did dip as far as the pacing goes, kind of toward the middle part of the book, and then things picked back up toward the end. But yeah, I thought that it was a pretty easy, pretty fast, pretty fun read. The absolute best thing about this book for me was definitely the dragons. I loved the fact that they had personalities. I loved how sassy they were. Not that they only have personalities, but they had distinct personalities. And I love how the two dragons that end up bonding with Violet were so protective of her, but in such different ways. The bond between Violet and her two dragons is hands down the best relationship in the entire book. That being said, let's now talk about the things that make me give this book 3 stars as opposed to 5. I think that this is my personal issue because this book was so hyped up. I was expecting to connect to at least Violet in the same way that I connected to, let's say, Katniss Everdeen, even Triss, Harry Potter, Hermione, like all of these very significant characters that I personally loved as a teenager and an adult reading these books, and it did not happen. And again, I think it just happens sometimes, and it's no one's fault. So it's like, okay, I'm not fully connecting to any of these people, but there's such a big world that we can explore, and the author obviously created a very vast backstory, and there's so much going on, because I'm like, let me just focus on that. And that is where I ran into my next issue, and that was the world building in this book specifically. Now, let me preface this by saying this is obviously just one part of the story. There is book 2. Book 3 is coming out later this month, so I realize that because this world is so vast, not everything can be and should be revealed and explained in the first book. I get that. However, I feel like things should still make sense in terms of the world building and the rules, even if it's a fantasy world. So can somebody please explain to me why we have people crossing the parapet and falling to their deaths needlessly? There is absolutely no reason for them to die. We are wasting human life when we still have other quadrants. We've got the infantry, we've got the scribe. Like, we can put these people in other places. There is clearly tensions, and war is brewing. We'll need the people, we'll need the brains, the smarts, and the bodies to protect and to fight. Yet, as a test, you are simply having people cross this parapet, and you just let them fall, and if they die, and listen, a lot of the times in these fantasy books, or in books in general, things don't make sense to the reader, but the difference is that the characters within the story should, I think, be constantly calling it out so that you realize, oh, this weird law or rule is in the book, but it is not meant to make sense, because these characters that we're following, and especially Violet, who is often, actually always, described to be as just the most intelligent person, you would expect these people to be like, I don't have a choice, I have to do what I'm told, because I'm not in charge here. But this makes no sense, and maybe even try to change things, or at least advocate for changes down the line. The parapet thing was the first thing that kind of made me think, I'm not sure if I'm vibing with how this war college is run. And then I learned that once you make it into the college, then you can actually kill each other. There are rules in terms of when you can and you can't, but you still can. And I was like, wait a minute, so now all of these people are training together. It is in the country's best interest, I think, to have as many writers as possible. So logically, you would want all of these people to help each other out, to feel like a unit, to lift each other up, and then see if any of the dragons eventually end up bonding with you. But no, we have these random side characters pretty much deciding that one person or another is, as they say, a liability. These are not trainers, generals, teachers deciding this. It is the actual students just deciding, oh, she's a liability or he's a liability, and then going forward with actually attempting or actually killing each other. This is on page 363, and it says, the death of a cadet is an inevitable yet acceptable tragedy. This process thins the herd, leaving only the strongest writers, and as long as the cause of death does not break the codex, any writer involved in extinguishing another's life shall not be punished. And in the little comment that I wrote, because I did annotate this book, I basically said, wouldn't it make more sense to have a squad that's a mix of extremely talented writers like Xaden, for example, and perhaps a few writers that are maybe weaker, but they have been training and a dragon chose them, as opposed to just being like, you're a liability, killing them, and not even giving the person a chance to train, or a dragon to pick them and maybe also help them in the training and help them become stronger through the signet powers. Like, it made no sense to me why human life meant so little when logically you would want to have as many people as possible to train and to become stronger and to bond with these dragons, and then to act as protection from the enemy. I don't know, maybe there is an explanation in book 2 and maybe book 3 that's coming out. Maybe I'm missing something, but that truly just did not make any sense to me. The next thing is just the concept that the children of the enemy, like Xaden, can be part of Basgiath, and they can even hold these very, very important leadership roles, which would not just give them access to potentially, secret information that maybe they should not have access to, but they would also be in a place where they could be the ones killing off all of these potential writers because they're liabilities. So again, it just seemed to me like they were intentionally letting a fox into a chicken coop. Overall, I liked Xaden. He's just your muscly, brooding, angry, controlling, but also has a sweet and soft side to him, shadow-wielding guy next door. And, you either like this trope or you don't. I like it. It didn't bother me. It was actually pretty fun to read his and Violet's banter, so that part I did like. But then again, as the sun illuminates everything in this room, I could not help but think of Rhysand from Akatar. Anytime that I would see Xaden on the page, the shadows, just the general personality, I saw Rhys. I'm like, this is Rhysand. It's just that he is in a college and he writes a dragon. It's really tough to do things that have never been done before and to create these characters that no one has ever seen or known in real life or read about in a book or seen in a movie, so I don't want to fault the author for making these choices. But again, there's so many people who love this dangerous, slightly toxic, or a lot toxic depending on how you see it, hot, gorgeous guy who is actually, in love with you and who will do anything to protect you. That type, people eat that up, and I mean, I'm not an exception. I do too, so, it is just creative choice that was made, but I definitely kept on thinking about Akatar and Reese the entire time, pretty much, that I was reading any scenes that Xaden was a part of. But like I said, Xaden was fine. The character that was grating on my nerves the entire book was Dane. What happened there? And again, this is not something that I'm blaming the author for. It is simply that is the kind of character that he is. It's just that any time Dane came into the picture, it was like, just please stop talking. Please, please. In the beginning of the story, he is positioned as a potential love interest. He is Violet's friend, and she is attracted to him. She definitely gives us that, vibe. She describes how hot he is, and I was expecting there to be a love triangle, and there really wasn't, mostly because of Dane's personality and just how annoying he was, because he annoyed me, and I think it's pretty clear that pretty quickly he started to annoy Violet as well. I'm not sure how he was before he joined the war college and became a writer. I mean, he had to be different for Violet to want to spend time with him, but as soon as these two get together and they're a part of, this completely new world, something just happens to Dane. Unless he was like this his whole life, I don't know, but man, is that man annoying. I understand that he is being protective of Violet and he does not want her to be where she is. He doesn't think that she is physically capable of training, but just the constant putting Violet down in every situation. He's always just complaining and negative, and then obviously we know what he does eventually. But what happened to Dane? Violet was described as fragile and weak so many times. She's doing these things that her body should not be subjected to, and it definitely added tension to the story, because with all of these sparring sessions and the training, I definitely felt afraid for Violet, knowing how easily her bones can snap and just how fragile her body is. But it was repeated so many times where I was like, you have to trust me as the reader to have already internalized the fact that she is fragile. Go into these training scenes with Violet and just see how she's able to handle it. Explain to me why Violet is constantly being described as fragile. Her bones are breaking. She's just this tiny, fragile little thing. And then we get to Xaden and Violet getting it on. The smutty scene happens. Page 375. And I didn't mind the smut. I mean, this is a new adult book, so I was kind of expecting for that to happen at some point. So fine with that. Violet is again described as so breakable. And then they eventually sleep together, and it's not just gentle sleeping together. Xaden is not being gentle. He's not being like, oh, I would love to do this with you because I'm so attracted to you, but I know that you're fragile, so maybe we should, take it easy. No, he is throwing Violet all around the room. Furniture is breaking. She then is causing lightning strikes to happen outside. The curtains nothing is popping out of place. She's okay. And then the next day, where you would expect there to be a description of some sort of her feeling sore, in pain, like anything, she's fine. She's fine and dandy. Literally on page 383, she talks about how she wakes up and Xaden is not there, but he left a handful of spring violets, and she's so happy. And then she simply gets dressed, and I think she plans to go to the archives. So then after chapters and chapters, pages and pages of being told that Violet is dealing with this illness, and she has all of these physical manifestations of this illness that make it difficult for her to train, to be at Basgiath, to be on the same level as everyone else, even though actually she is pretty good. I feel like even better than some of the other people training with her. She is described as this fragile, breakable human being, but only when it has to do with the actual fighting and the training. But then somehow all of these symptoms, all of these bodily issues that she has are not even mentioned once when she is in the sexy times era with Xaden. It just didn't seem consistent, and mostly not just because she did not break a bone, she did not have a joint pop out of place, she was not in pain, but because we didn't have the characters, Xaden and Violet specifically, mention anything about it. She's bonded with the dragons, and then Xaden is bonded with his, and then they are all bonded together. If that somehow makes them not just hot for each other, but then also somehow ensures that when Violet is getting, hot and heavy with Xaden, her body's okay because of the bond, I would have wanted at least one of them to question why nothing bad happened, and that conversation was never had. Like, how come we're using Violet's fragility as a plot point in some parts of the book, but then we forget about it in other parts of the book? Like, was that intentional, or did someone just forget? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Violet was okay as a main character. I wasn't particularly, again, attached to her, but she didn't really bother me either. There were definitely a lot of cool scenes that I visualized in my head, and I was like, well, if they do end up making the Fourth Wing series, it's gonna be so cool to see that on a TV screen. But then again, there were definitely a lot of moments where I was questioning Violet's thought process, mostly how obsessed she was with Xaden at the oddest moments. Like, for example, at the end of page 421, it says, both Xaden and I startle, our gazes colliding in shock. I slide off him, and Xaden covers me with his blanket before shoving his legs into his leathers and striding for the door. What the F are you talking about? He asks through a tiny opening in the door. Grab your flight leathers, and you'd better bring Soaring Gale with you, too, Garrick says. We're under attack. So, clearly, something is wrong. They are under attack, and, this is the moment in the book to really feel the tension. But then on page 425, literally 2 pages after Garrick said, we are under attack, we get a conversation between Rhiannon and Violet, and what do you think they're talking about? If your guess was that they're talking about Violet and Xaden having sex, then you would be correct. On page 25, Rhiannon says, like, you threw something at it, her brows knit. No, as in lightning struck, a lot, and I shattered his windows. I glanced toward the days, and look, there he is now, all calm, cool, and collected. My chest tightens as I wonder which is the real version of him, the one standing up there in complete control, ready to command his wing, or the one I had inside me less than a half hour ago, the one who declared that he doesn't deserve me but is going to keep me. This might have just been my you just set up the stakes and the tension is so high. There is a battle brewing, they are under attack, and then we somehow have the main character who's supposed to be, you know, very intelligent, very brave based on her previous acts in the book, like when she protected Andarna, but she doesn't seem concerned with preparing. She's just transitioning into thirsting over Xaden, and that's fine and fun, but I would have at least expected maybe Rhiannon or someone else to be like, Violet, snap out of it. We have got, you know, bigger problems right now, so let's just focus on that. Because what I'm trying to say is that characters don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be likable. The rules of the world don't have to make sense to me, to you, to anyone. But with character choices and the things that they say, if it's supposed to be positioned as them doing something wrong or saying something when they're not supposed to, you would expect there to be a side character, a love interest, someone to be like, can we talk about your sexcapades another time? Let's maybe get ready for battle or something, you know, or for people to again call out the things that don't make sense, like the parapet and the training and the codex. Still be part of it, still participate, because they really don't have a choice if this is the world that they are kind of thrown into. But also let the reader know that, hey, I'm in this world, I'm doing these things, but I know that it's not right, so I'm signaling to you, hey reader, I understand that you're questioning things because I'm questioning things too. And as far as Fourth Wing goes, it didn't happen as often as I would have hoped for it to happen, and that is pretty much why I ended up giving the book 3 stars. So these are my thoughts on Fourth Wing. I wanted to love this book. I wanted to be obsessed with the world and the characters and everything else. I definitely was obsessed with the dragons. Like I said in my Goodreads review, if there's ever a book from the dragons perspective or just about the dragons, I'm gonna be the first in line to get that. Will I read the second book in the series? I'm not sure just yet. Maybe it would answer some of my questions and clear things up. And I mean, there was a cliffhanger in the end, and I would definitely be curious to know what happens with Violet's brother and the whole revolution of it all. But I heard that the second book is even longer than the first one. I don't know, I'm just not sure if I'm ready to commit if I gave the first book only 3 stars. I don't know. So if you could tell me in the comments your thoughts about Fourth Wing, and especially your thoughts about book 2, and whether you think that I should give book 2 a chance and that maybe it would completely change my opinion about the world building and all of the characters. If you think so, please let me know, because again, I want to be as into the series as everyone else, but right now I just feel like it's a fine story, it's a fine book, but I'm not fully like in on it. I'm not fully there. I'm not in the 5-star range as so many other people seem to be. So yeah, these are